So tell us about some of your stumbling blocks you had in trying to finish this.
Staying on the schedule that I had built for myself, getting bored of the project sometimes. Oh, and getting discouraged and frustrated and just exhausted sometimes. Like there were times where I was sitting in the car in the parking lot going, I can't.
Hey, sisters and brothers, welcome back to ADHD is the New Black, and you're just in time for part 2 of my conversation with my friend Jessica McCabe. She talks about how she actually finished writing a book with ADHD. So make sure you pay attention because she's got some wonderful takeaways that you can use today. And if you think you know everything there is to know about Jessica McCabe, you don't know Jess, because she revealed something she's never shared with any other creator before.
How did you motivate yourself to write when you didn't want to write, when you didn't feel like it or felt you had nothing to say?
There were times that I didn't. So there were some Mondays where I didn't do anything. I just stared at the ceiling going, I don't want to. This is terrible. Why did anybody let me do this? What's wrong with me? It was a form of active procrastination. On every week that I was supposed to write and turn in a chapter, I had an accountability meeting set up with my editor on Thursday mornings. So Wednesday night, I had to turn something into her. I use a lot of strategies, frankly, that are in the How to Motivate Your Brain chapter. And one of them is to add motivational planks. So add a sense of urgency, add newness or novelty. So I would, I set up several writers retreats. So I had one that was a cabin in the woods and we'd just brainstorm ideas. So change of environment, adding novelty, adding the sense of urgency, having the accountability with my editor there. There were so many tricks that I know at this point, and I used all of them because this was a very, very difficult project.
Wow. So let me ask you, I forgot what I was going to ask you just now. So Jessica, after 7 years of literally informing, educating, empowering your audience about ADHD, why did you need a researcher when you know so much about ADHD?
I knew starting out that misinformation was worse than no information. And I was so terrified of being wrong and having somebody who actually knew what they were doing be like, what are you doing? You're ruining it. So I talked to Patrick, who's my research consultant, and he's been one of my best researchers for the channel. I see that you're trying to do science communication. Can I help you with that? And I was like, yes, please. And he's been so helpful in helping me understand things and make sure that when I'm communicating them in a very casual, easy, conversational way, that I'm not missing the nuance of it.
But the part where I really feel connected to you is towards the end, in your stories and endings. And it really resonated with me when you talk about the way you thought your life should have turned out or should be versus embracing what it is and postponing all of the things that you felt were important and that you thought you'd get around to when things are perfect. Yeah. Right? May I read some of your lines back to you?
Yeah, cool.
So this is where you talk about going back to a life that doesn't exist anymore. Do you remember that part?
Yeah.
Let me put my reading glasses on. Why am I'm struggling here?
Use your accommodations.
I know, right? So you're talking about goals about planting an organic vegetable garden in your mom's backyard, I guess. Building that backyard, spending times with friends without panicking about what you were behind on, impressing your agent and casting directors. A lot of those goals didn't make sense anymore. So much had changed since I set out on this journey. My mom had died. I had processed that much. It was heartbreaking. The realization that there was nothing I could do to make her life easier anymore, when that's why I so badly wanted to succeed and why I went on this journey in the first place. I live in Seattle now, and I don't know many people here yet. I could go back to my life, except it's been 7 years. I have nothing of that life left to go back to. This realization hit me hard. If I hadn't been so stuck on finishing what I'd set out to do, if I'd been mindful enough to notice the last bits of my past ambitions slowly disappearing while I was trying to become good enough to deserve them. This hit home personally to me, Jessica, because I find that I have lived the bulk of my adult life also putting off things that I felt like I either can't financially support or things aren't perfect enough in my life now. I don't consider the fact that life moves on. Nieces and nephews get older. People in your family that you're like, oh, as soon as I get this part of my life right, I'm going to be involved in their lives more, or I'll be able to buy all those Christmas presents, or I'll be able to buy their birthday presents, or I'll be able to show up to the birthday parties.
I'll be able to be there for the people I love when, when I get my shit together. Essentially, is what it is.
Thank you. And it's like, when you finally do get around to, let me drop in. It's like, wow. When did my nieces turn 17? They're driving now. In my mind, they're still, 5 or 6. Because, in my mind, well, they're waiting for me to get my shit together. No, they're not.
Yeah, the things we put on hold don't stay on hold.
Yeah, people don't stay on hold. Kids don't stay on hold. So how did that realization affect the way that you live your life going forward?
It was a really painful realization because I wrote that chapter. I actually had a different ending originally, and then I turned in my book, and then in that moment, it all kind of clicked. Like all the pieces started clicking into place, and I realized, like, oh, this is the end of my journey. Like I set out to learn about my brain and how to work with it, not against it, and put everything somewhere I could find it again. And this completion of the book is the end of that project. Like, because I was gonna learn all this stuff real quick, and then I could go back to my life only this time successful. And so I actually put my life on hold, a lot of my life on hold for while I did it was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna run out to the store and get ingredients real quick, and then when I get back, it felt like it was just gonna be a brief hold, but it ended up being 7 years. And so, like, realizing that, oh my God, I finished this. Like, I can go back to my life now. Wait a second. Like, that life doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, all these things I put on hold didn't stay on hold. Like, life did continue to happen while I was like, hang on, I gotta get my shit together. So it was pretty devastating. But what it made me realize is, like, a lot of the things that I put on hold didn't need to be on hold. Like, maybe the perfect version of them I couldn't do yet, but I could do some version, right? Like, I wanted to take care of my mom. I wanted to be a good daughter. I wanted to help her out. And I thought, like, I needed to get my shit together and make a bunch of money as an actress, and then I could help her out. And yeah, maybe, like, that's the ideal version, right? Like, oh, I can take her on this, luxurious vacation, or I can pay her bills and make it so that she doesn't have to struggle anymore or whatever. But, like, I could have cared for my family. I could have cared for my mom in smaller ways, even when I didn't have my shit together. And more importantly, like, there was this false promise that someday I would have my shit together. Like, someday I wouldn't struggle. Someday I wouldn't have ADHD, essentially, right? Like, someday I would learn enough tools and strategies and, like, get to a good enough place in my life that, like, I could, be this essentially different person, or have this completely different ability set or something, like, and then I wouldn't struggle anymore. And then I could be this ideal version of myself. And it was a lie. It was a lie, because I got to the end of this journey, and what I had was a lot of tools, and that was great. I had a lot of tools. I had the understanding of how and when to use them, but I still struggle.
Yeah.
I still have a hard time. Like, my sister's birthday was yesterday, and I forgot to call her. Like, I need to call her, right? Like, I still struggle with time. I still struggle with a lot of the same things that I struggled with. There was no, like, I don't know, like, happily ever after in which now I can do all of the things that I wanted to do. And so one of the things that I do differently now is I try to do at least some of it. Like, I might be like, oh, I'm in the middle of a project. Like, I can't have the deep, meaningful conversation that I would like to have with my friend that I haven't spoken to in a while. But you know what I can do? I can send a text, like one. I can send one text. I might not be able to, if I'm in the middle of a big project, I might not be able to go on, like, a European vacation, but I can go, like, hang out by a pool for a couple hours. Like, I can do little bits of it, right? It might not be the version of what I want to do that I want to do, but I can do a version of it. I can do it today. Whatever it is you want to do, it does not have to wait until when. You can do a bit of it, a part of it now. Like, there might be some things, like, if you want to start medical school, sure, you might need to get some things in place before you can start medical school, because that's very all encompassing. But most things are not all or nothing. And so having that all or nothing thinking, and this all or nothing in response to ourselves too, of, like, I'm either worthy of these things or I'm not. So moving forward, it's not, how do I be this person I'm supposed to be? It's, how do I live the life that I would like to live as the person I already am?
I feel like that's, for me, I can't speak to anybody else who reads this, but for me, that was the biggest lesson, or just the biggest the deepest impact for me, because I find that I'm going through that right now. You know, my biggest mother figure in my life, who's my aunt, who basically raised me, she's got dementia, and she's in Alabama, and I'm not there for her as much as I would like to be. So I'm going through that right now as well. Having already lost my mother to dementia a couple of years ago, and not feeling like I was doing enough to help out then. So there's a lot of guilt that goes with that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Thank you for writing that, Jessica. Thank you.
Thank you for reading it and for calling it out, because I forgot about it, but it still hits me. It's still emotional, and it was one of the only things I didn't learn while writing my channel. It's what I learned from turning in my book and going to go back to my life and realizing that it wasn't there to go back to. And it was a painful experience, but it was one of the most profound lessons for me too. And it was the one that I think I needed to be able to move forward and go, you know what, I'm going to still chase really meaningful goals. I don't regret doing that, but I'm going to do it in a way that doesn't put everything on hold until when.
Yeah. It also kind of leaves us stuck in the past, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad that you read that. I'm glad that you shared it again. But I think it's a lesson that a lot of people with ADHD need to know. And I think it's one that we learn early. You know, you can't go out and play until you finish your homework, right? Like you can't go do this until X, Y, Z. You can't do this until your room is clean. And then we struggle to clean our room and it never gets clean and we never get to do the thing. So I think if anything, like it felt like at the beginning of this book, somebody gave me permission to stop. Right. And then at some point in my journey, like when I thought I was failing, somebody gave me the permission to keep going with what I was trying to do. But at the end, it was almost like I gave myself the permission to start.
Yeah.
Like whatever it was that I wanted to do it now. Like at least, you know, some small version of it. I really want to have like the beautiful fire pit in my backyard that, you know, that I used to have when I was living with my mom.
Yeah.
I loved that fire pit. I don't live in a place where I can have a fire pit, but you know what I could do? I could put a freaking candle outside on the deck. You know, like I can have a version of what I want my life to be like. It might not be exactly it, but I don't have to wait until when for anything.
That's true. Well, Jessica, thank you for coming on my channel, for blessing me with, you know, your friendship.
Thank you.
And writing this book and your time. Thank you so much. And I sent this to you in a text a while back, but, you know, you seem to be in a very good place in your life, and like a lot of things that, you know, you thought weren't possible are happening for you, you know, with you becoming a mom and everything. And I just want to say out loud to the world that you are modeling, you know, what can be possible for people who struggle with ADHD, in whatever it is that they want, you know, whether it's becoming a mom and, you know, or finding a relationship when you think, oh, it's too late, or that's not for me because I'm not, you know, I don't have my shit together or whatever. You help me to see that it is possible, but it doesn't just happen. It has to be intentional. And that's the one thing that, you know, I try to help my clients realize when they're trying to reach goals is it has to be intentional. You know, it has to be intentional. It has to be intentional in the way that your brain can get to that goal. So,
yeah, and it might not look like how a neurotypical person might get there, and the goals themselves might not look very neurotypical, and that's okay. Yeah.
Well, any last words you want to add before we close out our interview today?
No, thank you. I'm so glad that we were able to make this happen, and you gave me things to think about, so thank you for that.
No, thank you, Jessica.
We're all learning from each other, I feel like. We're all learning together.
Where can people find How to ADHD, the book version?
The book. You can order the book now anywhere books are sold, which is really exciting. You can go to howtoadhdbook.com, and there's a bunch of links to different retailers, but you can also just go to your local library or your local bookseller and ask them to order it for you. So
it's in the library too?
It's in libraries, yeah.
That's you're big time. You got a book in the library with a Dewey Decibel number and everything?
Oh my God, I don't know what my Dewey Decibel number is. I gotta go find out.
That is so cool. Oh, for people under 30, Dewey Decimal. That's a system, an analog system by which old people used to go to the library and have to find books by using a card in a big stack of filing cabinets. And then you still wouldn't know how to find the book because it was so complicated.
Yeah.
What's next for you? You've written a book now. What's next?
I know. I'm still kind of figuring it out. I know what I want. I don't know how to get there yet. I think that I'm done with the like learning, you know, how I compare to neurotypical brains and like self-improvement stuff. Like 7 years of that was quite enough. Thank you. I will still present that information for people on the channel who maybe still need to know it. But in terms of what I'm learning now, what I'm interested in learning is not just how to do things, but what's worth doing. Because I think that that's true empowerment. It's not just like, you know, not just how to navigate the obstacles, because in a way that's still trying harder. It's just with more tools now. But like, what path do I even want to be on? What do I even want to be doing? What are my values? Like, how do we figure out what to say yes to and what to say no to? How do we make better decisions for our lives? And I think that's kind of something I'm interested in now, and potentially starting a second channel called The Wandering Brain, where I go out and have experiences and get to do things that I feel like I missed out on because I was struggling too much or putting too much on hold or learning how my brain worked and pouring so much effort into that there's so much of life I really feel like I missed out on. And so I want to go out and do things and meet people and really like less, you know, teach about ADHD and more model what it's like to have a healthy relationship with your brain and a healthy relationship with the world around you. Like, how do we go out into the world as people with ADHD with the toolbox that we have and interface effectively with other people not in shame, right? Like, not constantly apologizing for who we are, for showing up as ourselves. Like, how do we do that? I want to go out and say, hey, this is who I am. I'm going to take up my full space, but I also encourage you to take up your full space. So, you know, how do we navigate that? How do we interface together in a really effective and healthy way? And that's what I'm interested in learning now.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, I can't wait to witness the next part of your journey.
Don't you feel like you know Jessica's heart about 50% better now? If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you to my current Patreon supporters. And don't forget, everybody, share this video with anybody who you think might benefit from it.